take it on the chin for you. Half the time you want me to, you get down on me, and I'm down on me. I take you places everywhere. I try to act like
Megan MacArthur. Can you talk about the relative benefits of having a female astronaut on board, and how often are they on board?
Well, first of all, having Megan on board is incredible. She's such a great crewmate and friend, and keeps us all in line. Let me put it that way. But in general, you know, diversity is inherently a great value, especially in our line of work. It's always great to have people look at situations and solve problems from different perspectives. So that's just another one that we're happy to have. I've been very fortunate on all three of my space flights to have several women on each flight. And you know, we don't think of them as female and male. I think we just think of them as crewmates and astronauts.
Fire in outer space or in the space station?
We can. In fact, inside the space station, we have some research we do on flames and combustion. We have a combustion facility. Because the fire triangle requires fuel, oxygen, and an ignition source, when you're out in space where there's no oxygen, you're not going to have a fire. But inside the space station where we need oxygen to survive, yes, you could have a fire. The nice thing for us up here, though, is it's actually hard to keep a fire going because on the ground, those combustion gases are hot and will rise because of buoyant forces, get shoved out of the way by those cooler, heavier, oxygen-rich gases, and the flame continues. But in space, we don't have those buoyant forces. Again, we're all in a free fall. So the flame will look much more like a sphere, and it's hard for those oxygen-rich gases to get inside that sphere of combustion gases.
Shane and Mark, I have a question that either of you could answer, or both of you. And that is, what one question about science or spaceflight would you like to have answered that just has not been answered yet?
That's a tough one. We haven't had that one before. You've stumped us. Let us think about that for a minute. If you have another one, fire it off, and then we'll maybe come back to that.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about smoke. There's the Dixie Fire. There's a number of fires because it's just that time of the season. How does the Dixie Fire look?
Yeah, you know, we go around the planet, like we said, very quickly, and a lot of us are taking a lot of photography out of the windows, and over the last couple of weeks, we've seen fires everywhere, from the United States to Russia to Canada, and they look devastating from our perspective. Of course, we know what they're doing on the ground, and our hearts go out to all the people that are getting affected by those fires, of course. But yeah, it's a thing of nature, of course, in a lot of cases, and it's another thing that we can view, and I actually have sensors up here that we can maybe help people on Earth by tracking those and letting emergency services know what's going on from our perspective.
Speaking of things that you...
And hey, if you got the opportunity for me to try to... I'm sorry, do you want me to try to answer that previous question, or should we take the next one?
Sure, that would be great. Sure, that would be great.
So a big question for us is making sure that astronauts, when they get to other planetary surfaces, be that the moon or Mars, especially if it's a long duration flight like current technology will require to get to Mars, making sure that those people are healthy when they get there, because unlike when we land on the planetary surface, the Earth, we'll have a medical staff there waiting to take care of us. When we get to Mars and start exploring places that people haven't been before, we are not going to have anybody there to help us out. So we've got to figure out exactly what to do to keep people really healthy and what things we can expect them to do to take care of themselves as soon as they arrive.
Well, that's a great answer, and it brings up another question about me. I mean, we're looking at the two of you on the screen right now. You are absolute specimens of health, and I'm wondering how you maintain that health. Let's talk a little bit about your diet. What type of diet do you have, and how much do you feel like diet really plays an important role in your health?
Yeah, diet is very important up here, especially our diet and our exercise are what really keep us healthy. We're exercising about 2 hours a day, and we're on a diet where we're trying to hit a certain calorie amount every day. And we have a tracker, so everything that we pretty much put in our mouth, whether it's a drink or food, we're tracking it on an app that we have on our tablets. And we just kind of can check our progress throughout the day. And at the end of the day, hopefully we're around 100% of what we were supposed to get. And then by doing that over time, then it's going to make sure, for one, we don't lose any weight. So losing weight's not a good thing up here, especially if you lose quite a bit. But it also makes sure, as much as we're working out, we're getting enough nutrition to make sure our muscles and our bones are staying healthy.
If you're just joining us on Cool Science Radio, we're having a conversation with NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Mark Vande Hei, who are 270 miles above the planet and going pretty quickly, 17,500 miles per hour. Gentlemen, this is for either of you. I'm curious about these extensive experiments that you're all conducting on the International Space Station. Do you have a favorite experiment, or do you have an experiment that you're really looking forward to the results?
Well, I know one that I just worked on yesterday that's been going on about, I think about a month now, and it's got 2 or 2.5 more months to go, and we're growing chili peppers in space. And so I got to start that experiment a little over a month ago. Yesterday we got a chance to pull it all out and look at all the plants and actually thin some out in order to give all the nutrients to the really healthy ones, and they're all looking great. So here in a couple months we're hoping to have a harvest and get to eat some chili peppers.
Well, congratulations on the chili peppers. A quick question. We've got just about 30 seconds left. Have you been able to witness the space flights of the civilians, Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos and their traveling companions?
I personally have not, but I am cheering for them because we need those commercial space flights to be a success. That's a great agenda of NASA, and to cooperate with folks, because we want there to be a space industry with people going to space, and NASA's going to go ahead and hopefully lead that frontier further and further out into the solar system.
Shane and Mark, we want to thank you so much for joining us this morning on Cool Science Radio. We wish you continued success, and maybe we can talk again sometime, but thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
I can bring you down with a word or a thought that I say, taking you out by the knees, I leave you at bay. You pity me, I pity you, and in ways we're already gone. I'm picking apart all my enemies, and you'll say, I'm picking apart all my enemies, and you'll say, I'm tearing away at my enemies, and you'll say it's wrong.
Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Insider, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for voice check.
Station, this is Morgan McFall Johnson with Insider. How do you hear me?
Hello, Morgan. We have you loud and clear.
Great. Hello, Megan and Mark. Thanks so much for talking with me today. It seems like you've had a really eventful couple of months up there. How are things on station? Are you seeing any lingering effects from the recent attitude loss incident?
No lingering effects. We are doing great up here. We've been had a little time to recharge, and we're looking forward to Cygnus arrival tomorrow. So it's going to be bringing us a whole lot of new science, and so we're looking forward to jumping in and starting to work on all of that.
Well, that's great. Could you tell me a little bit about what it was like on station while the Nauka module was firing those thrusters? What were y'all doing that whole time, and what was the mood among the crew?
So I'll start with the last part. The mood amongst the crew immediately was, hey, let's check what's going on. but the ground said, hey, we're checking into it. And then honestly, for me, I said, okay. I went back to doing the maintenance task I was doing before and didn't worry about it a bit. Then when the ground called us back and said, we need you to get into the procedure to respond to this, I thought, okay, this is real. But we've been trained to deal with a much more challenging situation, one where the ground was not available to help us out for a much longer period of time. So from my perspective, it seemed like it was simpler to deal with than many of the things we're trained with on the ground.
Great. And what has the recovery process been like? It seems like you're, turned around ready to receive the Cygnus module, but did anything need to be fixed or put back into place after that incident?
For the crew up here, no, we really, we had a few tasks that we took care of while Mission Control Houston and Moscow were looking into the immediate event and recovering from that event. But we basically got right back on the timeline. We got the information as it came to our control centers. They shared that with us. And then we get back to work. Our job up here is to conduct the science and to keep the space station running. And so we do that, and we know that the ground teams are taking care of their side of the house as well.
Okay, lots happening in low Earth orbit lately. Megan, you're one of the last people to see the Hubble Space Telescope in person, so I'm curious for your thoughts on its recent technical issues. Obviously, it's fixed now, but this is a sign of Hubble's age. So what were your thoughts during that month when NASA was troubleshooting that?
Well, to be honest with you, I had a lot of confidence during that time period, and I wasn't in contact with anyone that was working those problems, but I have worked closely with those teams in the past, and I know what they're capable of. They know that instrument so well, and you're right that it has been in space for over 30 years, but we've had people continuously operating it and getting amazing results from it. They know that instrument so well that they obviously took their time to examine what the problem was and slowly kind of bring everything back online to get those systems back. So I did have a lot of confidence during that time period, was not involved at all, but enjoyed the updates that they gave, and then of course celebrated when they had this success and were able to bring the telescope back. When we did the servicing mission, it's been 13 years ago. At the time we said like maybe 5, maybe 10 more years of life, and it's already past that. So I think Hubble's got a lot more in store for us over the years.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing what those things are in store. There is another recent event that I wanted to ask you both about. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the first part of its 6th assessment on Monday. That report tells us that we're probably going to hit 1.5 degrees of warming by 2040, that extreme weather will get more extreme, the oceans are rising, warming, and acidifying, and that, some of those changes will last thousands of years. Even if you haven't read up on the report yourself, I imagine you're both familiar with the basic science, and you do have this rare vantage point. So what are your reactions to this report? What are you thinking as you go about your life up there and you look down at Earth and you know what's happening to it?
So you're right that we have, over many years, scientists around the world have been sounding this alarm bell. So while this report is recent, and you're right, I haven't had a chance to examine it in detail, it is maybe not as surprising as you might think. So this is a warning for the entire global community. It's going to take the entire global community to face this and to work through these challenges. We're very fortunate at NASA. We have a recent partnership with ESA to look at climate change, to conduct climate change research and start to hopefully figure out some solutions. The International Space Station is a great observing platform, and we as humans can look at the Earth. We're not individually doing science, but of course the observations that we make we can share with the public to show our vantage point. And recently, of course, we've been very saddened to see fires over huge sections of the Earth, not just the United States. Of course, big tropical storms, those are always coming, and potentially the flooding that comes after them. And we can see all of those effects from up here. And the other thing that we can see, of course, is the very thin lens of atmosphere that is what protects our Earth and everything on it. And so we see how fragile that is, and we know how important it is. Fortunately, the International Space Station also hosts several research platforms that provide data about the Earth's environment. There's the SAGE 3 experiment that looks at ozone, also JEDI that looks at forestry. And so there's some important research that's going on, and NASA is absolutely going to be a part of that as the global community tries to solve these challenges.
And I just reinforce that from this vantage point, it's really clear that compared to the size of the Earth, which is massive, and it's so massive, it's hard for humans to believe we could have an impact on it. But that atmosphere that Megan mentioned is so thin compared to the size of the Earth, and that's the layer, that is the place that we need to be able to live. So it's important that we take ownership of whatever we can do to help maintain it.
Well, thank you for sharing that unique perspective with us. Another thing that's changing is spaceflight. I'm sure you've both been asked about space tourism before, but with the launches of Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, there's this common thread of using their money to go on joyrides instead of solving problems here on Earth. What's your take on that? What's your response to that criticism?
Honestly, I think this is a great question that ties into the previous question. The more people, whether professional astronauts, very wealthy people who could have an impact on how people are employed and public policy, the more people that have this type of vantage point that we get to get and have a heightened awareness of the thinness of that atmosphere, the better off from my perspective. And honestly, I think it's in our best interest as explorers for us to have the capability that we currently have in low Earth orbit to be something where the government isn't the only customer for private industry. Ideally, this industry grows well enough that we're one of many customers, so it becomes less expensive for the taxpayer and something that allows us as NASA to explore further into the solar system.
Okay, and there are many more civilians planning to fly to space in the next year, so just curious if you have any advice for them, or alternatively, what's the best advice that you've gotten from astronauts before you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think one of the things that you realize if you spend any significant amount of time in space is that the things that would be impossible for me to do on Earth, I can do very simply in space. It's sort of like having superpowers. So I can lift things that on Earth I would need, 2 or 3 people to help me lift. But things that are very, very simple on Earth suddenly become really hard. Even something simple like sleeping, right, or brushing your teeth. You have to really think about how am I going to do this successfully and without making a mess. And so I think it's a little bit like other exploring that people have done over the generations. Whenever you're exploring new territory, you have to be willing to put up with a little discomfort and some risk, obviously. And so you have to have grit, I think, in your personality to help you get through those things and enjoy those situations.
Yeah, Megan, has anything surprised you about the space station experience, aside from those things you mentioned? What's your favorite part been, and what's been the most difficult adjustment?
One of the great things about the training that we have over the years is that it's very detailed, very closely with people who have lived and worked in space. And so I would say there wasn't a whole lot about coming here that surprised me, which is not to say that it wasn't exciting to experience for myself. So I feel like I kind of knew what to expect, but then actually getting to live it was still really fun and really exciting and really challenging as well. So as much as you prepare, the day-to-day life can still be high speed or slow speed, maneuvering around the environment is really fun. And then, of course, viewing the Earth, we recently have been enjoying some auroras, which are just incredible. And, having seen the photos again, I wasn't surprised by the auroras, but I was kind of bowled over by how breathtaking they really were and how mesmerizing it was to see it with my own eyes.
Wow, that's great. That must be quite a sight. The space station has a limited number of years left, and China's building its own space station, so the circumstances of human presence in low Earth orbit, it seems like they're going to change. Not clear how far into the future that is, but How does that play out for you two day to day on the space station, and what would the ideal future in orbit look like to you?
So day to day for us, we have so many things that we have to pay very careful attention to that I actually don't spend a lot of time, especially during the workday, thinking about how a Chinese space station is going to affect things. I do believe that we perform better when there's competition involved, so that's a positive thing. It just reminded me that another thing about this future with more commercial participation, with more countries being involved, it gives the humanity an opportunity for that much more science.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I also wanted to ask you about your experience on the station. If you do give up your return seat to Russia's film crew mission, it seems like you might have a shot at breaking Scott Kelly's record 340-day space flight. Have you thought about that? How does that prospect make you feel? And how do you plan to make the most out of your year in space if that does happen?
Well, I did hear that, but I don't think it's really my record. I think it would be the whole team's. I think it's just another step forward for humanity. And I also don't expect that to be a record that would last for very long, because we're doing bigger and better things all the time, and especially as we eventually get to Mars, that's gonna be a drop in the bucket compared to a Mars flight. The way I'm dealing with the possibility of having a longer than normal flight, which actually for Megan and my planned flight right now, a 6-month flight is a long flight. All I'm really trying to do is just focus on the day and recognizing that this could be my last time in space ever. Just trying to find things to appreciate about every moment is really the way I'm dealing with an uncertain amount of time, by just focusing on what I'm certain about, what I'm living at the moment.
What are some of the things that you've appreciated, especially lately, from that perspective?
A lot of good laughs, talking to my crewmates, the view out the window. As Megan mentioned, the freedom of motion inside the space station. I can't do a double backflip or a single backflip on the surface of the Earth, but I might even get 3 in without hitting my head on something up here. The science that the sense of purpose that we are working every day and contributing to humanity is a wonderful job to have. And I'm sure I could go on and on if I just spent a little more time thinking about it. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, the flipping does sound really fun. Megan, before launch, you told me that this will probably be your last mission for the sake of your family. Do you still feel that way? And if so, how are you making the most of this space flight?
I do. I think that this is likely to be my last space flight, but you never know. Maybe we'll all go as a family one day. That would be fun, maybe. But I think Mark really said it correctly. You try to experience the moment, enjoy the moments as they come, the time together as a crew, the camaraderie, the shared experience, even when that shared experience is frustration. We are contributing to something that we all believe in, that we believe is larger than ourselves as individuals. We're very fortunate to, on a daily basis, I didn't come here to be frustrated. I didn't come here to be annoyed for 6 months. And so you really have to realize, hey, I'm in space. I'm floating. I'm flying. I'm enjoying this amazing view. I'm going to experience a little bit of that joy every day.
Yeah, dealing with that isolation and being trapped in a small space with the same people for months and months is an experience that many of us might be able to relate to now after the last year. And you mentioned those frustrations, and there are difficulties with that, especially when you're operating such a big piece of machinery. How does the crew deal with those kinds of frustrations and challenges on an interpersonal level?
I would say for this crew, this bunch of us, it's humor. We deal with frustration with humor, and I would say interpersonally, our crew gets along really, really well. And the frustrations have to do with, where did I put my spoon? Things like I'm living in microgravity, and it's hard to keep track of my stuff when I'm trying to do something very simple. So we can share that experience. We can make jokes about it, and I think we use humor to help one another and to help ourselves. So hopefully that's something that is meaningful for folks on the ground. We watch programs together, sometimes movies, or we had fun with the Olympics and had our own Olympic games. And so just trying to share the experience together, I think, is what really helps us.
And actually, another thing, I think a very important thing for a crew member on a flight like this is the relationship you have with yourself. So there's times when we get frustrated with ourselves, and you've got to kind of give yourself a break. Decide that, wait a minute, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I just made a mistake, but okay, but next time I'll do better. And just be a good friend to yourself. That really goes a long way when you're on a space flight and isolated from most of humanity.
Yeah, sounds like those will be important attitudes to carry forward once as humanity is entering longer-term space flight. Megan, how's your family planning to celebrate the completion of this whole years-long Crew Dragon saga? And also from both of you, I'd love to hear more about those Olympics games.
I think for my family, when I come home and have gone through the initial recovery, a lot will depend on, sort of what's the state of the earth at that time. I know that we would love to do some travel. I would love to visit other family, and, as soon as we can, we'd like to hit the road and start visiting some of our beautiful national parks that I've been spotting from up here. I've been planning trips, camping trips, while I've been up here, thinking, oh, that looks like a nice place to visit. So we'll look forward to being able to take our son to some of those places.
As far as the...
Go on ahead, be afraid of him. I know you love yourself more than me. So go on ahead, be afraid of it. I know you want yourself more than me. Sail on.
Station on Space to Ground 2. Cygnus capture is complete. You are go for Cygnus post-capture reconfig.
Congratulations, and it's great to have Cygnus back at ISS.
Leslie, on behalf of the Expedition 65 crew, I'm pleased to bring the Cygnus spacecraft SS Ellison Onizuka aboard the International Space Station today. Our congratulations go out to the combined teams from Northrop Grumman and NASA for the mission successes so far. This mission enables groundbreaking research through which we hope to meet Colonel Onizuka's challenge to enable the next generation to look out from a higher plateau.
Sail onward, the current, the ocean, my love will bring us home. In your life, like my life, is meaningless in the long run. Your life, like my life, is meaningless in the long run. Your life, like my life, is meaningless in the long run. Sail onward, the current, the ocean, the sun will bring you home. Sail onward, the current, the ocean, my love will bring us home. Sail onward, the current, the ocean, the you So here he drops the line, sets anchor to never hope he finds.
We have confirmed capture at 5:07 a.m. Central Time, 6:07 a.m. Eastern as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 270 statute miles above southwest Portugal.
lives are great. They're tattered anyway. And I don't mind the sun.
Houston Station on Space to Ground 2. Cygnus capture is complete. You are go for Cygnus post-capture reconfig.
Congratulations. It's great to have Cygnus back at ISS.
The ramifications of
Leslie, on behalf of the Expedition 65 crew, I'm pleased to bring the Cygnus spacecraft SS Ellison Onizuka aboard the International Space Station today. Our congratulations go out to the combined teams from Northrop Grumman and NASA for the mission successes so far. This mission enables groundbreaking research through which we hope to meet Colonel Onizuka's challenge to enable the next generation to look out from a higher plateau.
in a future day, feel like you should. And someday we'll make it a little easier. And all those lives are great. Your dad had gone away. And I don't mind the sun, like in everyone. Compliance is a must, she said. The ramifications of the dead. Sleeping like a someday we'll make it a little easier. At a future date, you feel like you should. You feel like you should. And someday we'll make it a little easier. You won't be amazed. You feel like you should. And someday we'll make it a little easier.
It is great to be back at America's Space Coast, at this historic place with the men and women of the John F. Kennedy Space Center. And it's here today in the 21st century, the The modern marvels that launched from these grounds prove that the public and private sectors are achieving far more together than we ever have apart. American businesses are developing new rockets, spaceships, satellites that are taking us further into space than ever before, and renewing our confidence that we can and will achieve the impossible once again. This truth echoes through the history of the Kennedy Space Center. Named for a president who challenged the American people to marshal the best of our, in his words, energies and skills to become the world's leading spacefaring nation. I know America will once again astonish the world with the heights we reach and the wonders we achieve. And as these feats of American enterprise and ingenuity attest, much more than the bridge to space, Kennedy Space Center is the bridge to the future.
A single place to go. A friendship in the tank for 2 weeks. And we grew up on the wrong side of the river. And our childhood has gone on for way too long. And in time, I know we'll find it. We've been stuck across the river for way too long.
Canadarm 2 is now over the pin. Snares are close, now waiting for that final stage of capture.
That's back when gas was a little thing. Didn't cost as much as a diamond ring. Like the one I used to marry your ex-wife. We grew up on the wrong side of the river. And our childhood has gone on for way too long. And in time, I know we'll find it. We've been stuck across the river for way too long.
We have confirmed capture at 5:07 a.m. Central Time, 6:07 a.m. Eastern at the International Space Station in Cygnus. We're flying 270 statute miles above southwest Portugal.
I've always knew you were a mess, and now you're second best. And I'm not the one afraid to be alone. And we grew up on the wrong side of the river. Yeah, been living in this life for way too long. And in time, I know we'll find it. We've been stuck across the river for way too long. For way too long. For way too long. For way too long. For way too long.
Houston Station on Space to Ground 2. Cygnus capture is complete. You are go for Cygnus post-capture reconfig.
Congratulations, and it's great to have Cygnus back at ISS.
Leslie, on behalf of the Expedition 65 crew, I'm pleased to bring the Cygnus spacecraft SS Ellison Onizuka aboard the International Space Station today. Our congratulations go out to the combined teams from Northrop Grumman and NASA for the mission successes so far. This mission enables groundbreaking research through which we hope to meet Colonel Onizuka's challenge to enable the next generation to look out from a higher plateau.
That's why I love the way you make me feel. Not a knight in any shining garb, just a man that's your best friend. I know I may disappoint you, love, but you can count on me until the end. It takes me time to figure things, and you, my dear, I've never figured out. And all my fear and loneliness, my heart never had a doubt. And I know the way I feel.
Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Cool Science Radio, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is John Wells and Lynn Ware Peak with Cool Science Radio. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear. How about us?
We hear you loud and clear. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm going to give a brief introduction, and we will start all of this. From the NPR studios of KPCW in Park City, Utah, this is Cool Science Radio. I'm John Wells. I'm here with Lynn Ware Peak, and I'm here with Sophie O'Connor, our 10-year-old science friend from Park City's Trailside Elementary School. Our guests this morning are NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Mark Vandehei, who are 270 miles above the planet Earth on the International Space Station, which is traveling at 17,500 miles per hour. Shane and Mark, a big welcome to Cool Science Radio.
You're tearing up my words, my food in my mouth.
It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here, and we're delighted to have you on the program this morning. We have a bunch of science questions, but I want to ask a question that's not too science-y. First, you both have extensive backgrounds in education. You have postgraduate degrees in science and applied physics. You both have overseas military service to our country. And you have multiple space flights with over 200 days each in space, not to mention a bunch of spacewalks. We don't really have the time today to go into the detail of each of your records, so I'll just say that you're both, let's say, overachievers. So my question's this: what informed and motivated you during your childhood that brings you front and center to America's space program today?
Wow, that's a really good question. I would say a sense that if I wasn't doing well enough, that it was my responsibility to try harder, that I believed I really could do anything if I worked at it hard enough. Now, certainly as I got older, I realized that either there were some things that were beyond my capability, or maybe the time on the return on investment wasn't worth the effort. But certainly as a kid, I knew that if it was all about the work I put into things, that determined my success.
Well, good morning to you. This is Lynn Ware-Peak, co-host of Cool Science Radio, Shane and Mark. We're so excited to talk to you this morning. I wanted to ask, I would say, a much more comfortable way of life in the ISS. Can you tell us about this recent installation, off-grid improvements? How does this translate when you're doing it in space?
Well, toilets are very useful up here, just like they are on Earth. Mark and I have gotten, I guess, the pleasure of working a lot on the new one that we installed here probably about a month ago now. It is not functional yet. The hardware's in place. We're still working on a few things to make sure it's completely functional for the rest of the crew and us, but it's a nice capability. It's this toilet that we're testing out now. It actually is a test because it's going to be used on the Artemis missions, the missions going to the moon. So we want to test it out here, make sure it works really well for our colleagues that are going to be taking it to the moon later on.
I'm Sophie O'Connor. I'm 10 years old from Park City's Trailside Elementary School. I'm honored to meet you today and to be here with Lynn and John Wells. I love science and I'm very happy to be talking with you this morning. My first question is, if you are in zero gravity, how do you sleep and make sure you get a good night's sleep?
Once I got used to floating while I'm sleeping, it's actually some of the most comfortable sleep you can get from my perspective. I think people on the Earth try really hard to recreate this sense of...
Question is for you. Many people view our planet from the perspective of a Rand McNally map with 195 separate countries. As you view our planet with geographic borders and you observe the small and delicate ribbon of atmosphere that keeps us all alive, how has that shaped your thoughts about our home planet, Earth?
Well, we have an incredible perspective, as you might imagine, from up here. Our planet is spectacular. It's fragile, and that's the part that we see up here, that thin layer of atmosphere that you were talking about. So to me personally, it just made me want to take care of our planet when I'm back on Earth. It's given me a different perspective to think about, taking care of our planet. Now, it's really cool for us up here to know that we have instruments on the outside of the space station that are watching climate change and looking at the ozone and things like that. So we're still kind of part of all that stuff because we're part of the space station. So definitely want to take care of our planet. That's number one, so that we can continue to live like we know, like we have been living over the last several centuries.
Right. Well, taking care of the planet is one thing, and then taking care of the health of your own bodies is another thing. Shane, how about this for you? Is there any one thing that you've noticed about your own health that you possibly have not felt before? Mark, if you want to take that.
Sure, I'll take it. I got to highlight the fact that Shane actually went outside and did those EVAs. I was on the inside making sure they were well supported with the tasks to get them out the door. But those solar arrays are...
The Earth.
I'm sorry, do you want me to try to answer that previous question, or should we take the next one?
Sure, that would be great. Sure.
Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Insider, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Morgan McFall Johnson with Insider. How do you hear me?
Hello, Morgan. We have you loud and clear.
Great. Hello, Megan and Mark. Thanks so much for talking with me today. It seems like you've had a really eventful couple of months up there. How are things on station? Great. And what has the recovery process been like? It seems like you're, turned around ready to receive the Cygnus module, but did anything need to be fixed or put back into place after that incident?
For the crew up here, no, we had a few tasks that we took care of while Mission Control Houston and Moscow were looking into the immediate event and recovering from that event. But we basically got right back on the timeline. We got the information as it came to our control centers. They shared that with us. And then we get back to work. Our job up here is to conduct the science and to keep the space station running. And so we do that, and we know that the ground teams are taking care of their side of the house as well.
Okay, lots happening in low Earth orbit lately. Megan, you're one of the last people to see the Hubble Space Telescope in person, so I'm curious for your thoughts on its recent technical issues. Obviously, it's fixed now, but this is a sign of Hubble's age. So what were your thoughts during that month when NASA was troubleshooting that?
Well, to be honest with you, I had a lot of confidence during that time period, and I wasn't in contact with anyone that was working those problems, but I have worked closely with those teams in the past, and I know what they're capable of. They know that instrument so well, and you're right that it has been in space for over 30 years, but we've had people continuously operating it and getting amazing results from it. They know that instrument so well that they obviously took their time to examine what the problem was and slowly kind of bring everything back online to get those systems back. So I did have a lot of confidence during that time period, was not involved at all, but enjoyed the updates that they gave, and then of course celebrated when they had this success and were able to bring the telescope back. You know, when we did the servicing mission, it's been 13 years ago, at the time we said, like, I think Hubble's got a lot more in store for us over the years.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing what those things are in store. There is another recent event that I wanted to ask you both about. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the first part of its sixth assessment on Monday. That report tells us that we're probably going to hit 1.5 degrees of warming by 2040, that extreme weather will get more extreme. The oceans are rising, warming, and acidifying, and that, you know, some of those changes will last thousands of years. Even if you haven't read up on the report yourself, I imagine you're both familiar with the basic